Hello, and welcome to the Death and Sex Podcast. My name is Stephen Thomas, and with me always, and only today, is Dr. Kailey Bradley. Say hello, Dr. Bradley.
Good morning.
You're still not doing it.
Purposefully and stubbornly did not do it because I knew that's what you wanted me to do.
So there's some PDA going on now. Is that right?
Yes, indeed.
Pathological demand avoidance.
I don't like being told what to do.
Yep, that is true. I can speak from personal experience. Well, hey, it's good to be back. It's been a while, a couple of months. It's been a busy summer. We had a lot of just stuff happen over the summer, holidays. I got sick. I think you've been sick. So getting back into the swing of things, trying to get back on a regular schedule has been it's been a lot. And it hasn't been fun. Some of it's been fun. Holiday's been fun. I'm not a masochist, so getting sick hasn't been fun. But it's good to be back. So today's kind of just a get back into the swing of things type of podcast. So we won't get into anything too super deep today. But one of the things, Kailey had a great idea for what we could talk about, kind of to get us back into the swing, is, I'll let you introduce it, Kailey.
Yeah, I thought we could talk today about expectations that, maybe an individual might have going into the counseling process, questions about what counseling actually looks like. When you decide that counseling might be helpful for you, what are you signing up for, right? So we wanted to kind of, discuss some of that today and maybe hopefully dispel some anxiety about what counseling is or isn't. So that's our order for today.
Yeah, because I do think for a lot of people, it can be very intimidating, especially if you've never done it before. It can definitely be overwhelming because you don't know. I think we can all agree change is hard. Doing new things can be scary. And counseling, if you're not familiar with what it is, it's a little daunting.
Yeah. What do you feel like are some of the maybe misconceptions that people have about the counseling process that they bring into sessions?
Well, I think the biggest one is that I'm broken. There's maybe something wrong with me, that I have to be here. And for couples, it's, and I've heard this so many times, it's the last step towards, ending the relationship. I don't want to go there because if I go, the relationship's over. And for some people, that's actually true. What I always say, especially about the couples piece, is the sooner you get in, the better. What often happens, more often than not, especially in relationships, is we wait till the last minute to get help. And by the time we get there, we're already in a terrible spot. And I had that happen to me not that long ago. A couple I met for one session, and then, so it's not uncommon that that happens. It's actually very common because, again, we're just holding off the inevitable and thinking, okay, well, if I go to counseling, that's it. Whereas if we got in a little earlier, actually a lot of good work could have happened and we could have worked on it sooner before, there was emotional barriers that we put up in order. Stonewalling, basically, as Dr. Gottman would call it, to the point where, we're just so emotionally disconnected, it's hard for us to work through. What about you, Kailey? What are some things that you see?
What is, before I answer, what is stonewalling for folks who may not know what that term means?
Oh, man. Well, I just had Dr. Gottman's Four Horsemen pulled up and I closed it. But from memory, so Dr. Gottman is a kind of like him and his partner, Dr. Julie Gottman, are kind of like the go-to individuals for kind of couples work. And they've written a number of great books. And one of the approaches that they came up with was the Four Horsemen for couples. And basically, after observing a number of couples, they did some research and put together this approach, which is if we see these four things happening in the relationship and they don't get addressed, that could be the end of the relationship. And one of the last of the Four Horsemen, which we could talk about the Four Horsemen, we could do a whole session on the Four Horsemen.
We could.
But that's not what today's podcast is supposed to be about.
I know. I'm sorry. I got you off track.
No, it's okay. No, it's good. It was a good question, though, because I mentioned it. So, no. But the last one being stonewalling. And stonewalling is where we're just so emotionally disconnected. We're so frustrated because we've been criticized. We've got some contempt, some resentment. Maybe we're very defensive. and we're emotionally disengaged. And why do we do that? We do that because we're protecting ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people do that because they get to a point where they eventually realize this isn't going to work, but we're too afraid to end it. We're just like we're too afraid to go to counseling. So we're going to stonewall. And the more that we stonewall, the more we create emotional distance, the easier it is when you finally get to that point to say, all right, I think we're done. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
thank you for giving us a new word of the day.
stonewalling.
Yeah. To the question that I asked you, I'll answer it myself. Misconceptions about counseling. I think there's also like a pressure that we as humans put on ourselves that things need to happen immediately. That if I go to counseling, I'm going to wake up the next morning completely like better, and that all my problems are going to be gone. And maybe if we don't even articulate that, like maybe we feel a sense of like, yeah, I go to counseling. I thought this was going to make things, quote, better.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the reality is sometimes, I would say all the time, healing is a process. It's not linear, and it may take twists and turns, and we may feel like, actually, I feel kind of worse, right? Because I've just shared things that are a little painful, and that doesn't feel fun. And so, I think it's important to remind ourselves to be gentle with this process. It isn't going to happen overnight, and to give ourselves that grace and time.
Yeah, absolutely. And just because you're going to counseling doesn't mean that you're broke, right? I think
I
that's
think
the other
that's
thing
huge.
too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
counseling.
There's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah, one of the first things I try to really emphasize in my first session when you're doing, like informed consent, first of all, we talk about, this is a safe space because what you say in here stays in here. Obviously, we have a duty to warn if, elder abuse, child abuse, animal abuse, or we know someone's about to get hurt, or we know someone else is about to get hurt. We have that duty to warn. But then the other piece about that is that this is your space. You're in charge. We get to talk about what you want to talk about. I'm not going to direct you in any way, in any direction you don't want to go. And I think that's also kind of like the fear of like, well, if I do this, what are they going to say about me? And what are they going to tell me that I'm doing wrong? And that's not our job. Our job is to hear you, listen to you, and then provide some potential ideas, maybe some potential solutions. But again, it's not our job to necessarily just give you the solution if there is one, because there might not be, or to make you do something you don't want to do. It's very much all about you are in control. And it goes back to that old idea of coach. What is a coach? If we think about it, the term coach derives from horse and carriage. It's the carriage behind the horse, that the horse took you in the destination. A counselor is kind of like a coach. We can't get you to the destination. You've got to go there yourself, but we can definitely help you get there and maybe
we can
figure out
guide
ways
you,
that
but we can't push you.
I like that.
Well, we can push gently,
Yeah.
right? But it's more of a not literally push.
If
we can,
well, if in this metaphor that we're using, and we're going to use Kailey as the example with some pathological demand avoidance, and I try to push Kailey, that's not going to go very well.
I think that's true for most people, right? If we think about like, yeah, I think there's something to be said of like, yeah, I can guide you and walk alongside you, but ultimately, like, when a client comes to counseling, it's their life, and I don't want to take their autonomy away as a human being by saying like, you need to do this, you need to do that. Now, I will say sometimes people say, Kailey, just tell me what to do. And I often joke that I'm not wise enough to dictate that. But I think ultimately, yeah, we need to empower versus saying, yeah, you need to do this, you need to do that.
Yeah. I like that. I'm not wise enough to tell you. That's a very wise thing to say, I think.
What other, I guess, maybe anxieties do you feel people may have as they start the counseling process?
How long will this take? Can we get this done quickly? Can we get through this quickly? Do I have to be here forever?
And what would you say to that?
I would say, how long do you have to be here? I don't know. Hopefully not forever. We don't want to have you here forever. That's not the goal of counseling, to keep you in counseling forever. I definitely want to validate for some people having a regular check-in, can be really helpful and validating, and especially if you're dealing with some more maybe, I don't want to say severe, but more like impactful diagnoses, that can definitely be a powerful thing. I think for myself, when I have my own counseling, it's a really good, once a month or every 2 or 3 week check-in can be really just, again, validating, and can be helpful for me as I'm navigating different issues in life, and working on maybe some things I want to improve that I just
Mm-hmm.
keep maybe getting distracted on other things that
Yeah.
keeps me from hitting those goals. So I think that's one. How long am I going to be here?
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, not very long. Ideally, you're here for a very short time, and then you're off to, moving forward. And you can always come back. You can always do another check-in.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's one. How long do I have to be here? What about you?
Are you going to judge me? And a client may not explicitly say that, but I do think sometimes there's a period where, a client is really kind of sussing out, like, can I trust this person? Is this a safe place? And I think that is something that I really pride myself on, is trying to create a hospitable space where, um, that not just physical safety, but emotional safety is paramount, right? I want a person to feel like, yeah, there is no judgment in here. And that's so counter to other places in our lives, right? And it's what I think makes counseling different and unique, is that there is that non-judgment, and you don't have to worry about, like, oh gosh, what are they going to say about me? That's not a thing here in counseling. I often will have clients even say, like, gosh, I don't know if I can say this in here. And I will joke, well, if you can't say it here, right? Like, where else can you? Right? We really, really want to create that hospitable, safe place. And, let me rephrase safe place. I would say it's more a brave place, right? Like where you feel brave enough to engage,
Hang
right?
on, hang on, hang on. Snapping my fingers there.
That's not original. That's from Dr. Stacy Lightham, FYI. A brave space versus a safe place.
Okay. All right, Dr. Lightham from Cleveland, Cleveland State. Is that right?
Yeah. Cleveland State
Yeah,
University. Yeah.
yeah.
But I think that's a good distinction, right? Because, like, yeah, it may not feel good. When we think safety, sometimes we think about, you know, good emotions or positive emotions. But I think sometimes the work we do in counseling is brave, right? Because we do unearth and unpack all of the emotions, all the things, all the feels.
Yeah, all the
That's
feels.
another that's another thing I think that people assume. If I go to counseling, I'm never going to be sad again. Um, and it's
Well,
not
I
about. Oh,
I
go
have
ahead.
to imagine with no, I was just gonna say with you doing grief work, I would imagine for a lot of people that's what they would ideally like, right? I'm gonna come
Mhm.
do my grief work so I can't be sad anymore.
I also think that we live in a culture where any emotion other than happiness, we try to get rid of. And I'm an apologist for sadness, meaning I think sadness can teach us a lot. I think any emotion can teach us a lot, but counseling and having that resource isn't about taking away emotions.
Right.
It's about how do we move forward with them, right?
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite classes or professors that we had in our graduate program for counseling, Dr. Rushling talked about this idea that all emotions are good. They're there to
Mm-hmm.
inform. Emotions
Mm-hmm.
stop being, maybe we instead of good, let's use the word healthy. Emotions stop
Mm-hmm.
being healthy when they stop informing and they start dictating action. And so
Mm-hmm.
again, like sadness, hurt, heartbreak, even something like anger, which, and anger is what we
Mm-hmm.
would call a secondary emotion. We don't usually
Mm-hmm.
get there until we first feel hurt, frustration, or a fear.
Mm-hmm.
They're there for very healthy and good reasons. They start being unhealthy. They stop being maybe good when they stop informing and then dictate our actions. Definitely, like, anger can motivate us to action for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but we definitely don't want it to dictate our actions.
They're messengers. They're indicators that something needs to be paid attention to, right? When I'm sad and I'm experiencing that, um, there's so many little indications like, okay, maybe I need to rest, or maybe I need to, allow myself a break. So yeah, emotions are messengers.
Yeah. I like that. Emotions are messengers. What would you say is, for some people, thinking about the work you do, Kailey, and we can also talk about the work I do, but what's like maybe the hardest part of counseling for the client, maybe even for us as the clinician?
I think when I started as a counselor, there was a sense that like my job was to fix.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've learned more and more that that's not my job. I'm a supportive witness to a grieving person. I love the phrase bearing witness.
You're throwing out lots of good terms today. Supportive witness, bearing witness, brave space. I'm digging it. I have to write this down.
Well,
Supportive witness.
Sometimes my brain is firing, other times not so much. Yeah, but I think I've learned that it's not my job to fix or rescue. It's really my job to validate what's going on. Not to say, all right, let's fix this grief thing, but rather like, this sucks. And I'm sorry, it sucks.
Yeah, just some basic empathy.
Empathy is an underrated superpower, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we don't need to get into the weeds on this, but it's crazy that there's a movement in our culture currently that says empathy is wrong. It breaks my brain.
Toxic.
Yeah.
There's a popular book out right now called Toxic Empathy, and it hurts my heart because I don't know how we interact as humans
Without empathy.
if we're not empathic to the shared human experience.
Well, I think that's kind
even
of
if we don't understand it.
Right. Well, not having empathy is kind of how it makes it easier to villainize someone else or another group of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's scary for sure. You had said for you when you started out, it felt like you had to fix it,
Mm-hmm.
which I know that feeling. I think the one that I still struggle with is I have to have an answer. I have to have the right answer. And that can be really hard. But I do think there's, I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast, but I know you and I have talked about, like, there's power in saying, I don't know. There's power in saying, I don't have an answer for that right now. I think one of the best things I've done is giving myself permission to, and I'll even say to the client, give me a minute. And I've even got to the point where I've actually turned off because I do a lot of virtual work. I'll actually turn off my camera and take a minute and just sit before I come back with an answer if we're really in the weeds on something. And sometimes when I come back, I still don't have the answer. And I'll say that, or I'll say, this might not be the answer you're looking for, but here's something that I think might be helpful.
I think it's really powerful in working with kids. When a kid asks a question, I think adults automatically feel like to be an adult means to have an answer. But I think, to say to a kid, I don't know, what do you think? That's really powerful for a kid to feel like their questions aren't shut down, or like that they're, allowed to kind of, not be sure, and to have that modeled by an adult in their life. I think is really, I don't know. I think it's cool.
I think it's cool too. So we talked about the hardest part of counseling for us. What about for the client? Is it maybe, again, thinking about the work you do, maybe sitting there with some of those emotions, I think can be really hard. Even in my work, we're doing couples work. I think maybe being vulnerable or being willing to be vulnerable, either in session with the counselor or be vulnerable with a partner in couples work. Like, I think that is probably some of the harder things I see clients struggle with. What about you?
Yeah, I think, again, just that desire. When am I going to stop grieving? When am I going to be done grieving? And I still get it. I wish that I had a calendar and I could say, you're going to be done grieving on this day. But that's not how grief works. I think and sometimes that's comforting to clients to know that grief doesn't follow a timeline. And then I have other clients who will say, I wish it did. And I hear that, and it's, again, just reminding individuals that, again, it's not linear. This may take some time. Be gentle with yourself. Just because you have, several good days in your grief process and then you have a bad day, like that doesn't mean that you're like failing at your grief, or that, again, like you said when we started, like that there's something wrong with me. I have a sign in my office that says you're not crazy, you're grieving, but grief can make us feel like we're crazy. Like it legitimately doesn't feel normal. And so this is a little off topic, but one thing I won't say to my clients is, oh, well, this is normal. Because it doesn't feel normal. It's valid. Your experience is valid, right? And so that's what I kind of like to say, instead of like, that's normal. I don't feel like it.
We're talking about, how long does counseling last? How long does this take? How long will it take for me to work through my grief? When does counseling, how do we know when it's time to end counseling? And what does a healthy ending potentially look like?
Do you want to answer that one, or you want me to answer that? I feel like
Well,
I've
I
been
asked a
talking too
question.
much.
You haven't talking
Gosh,
too
dang
much.
it. I don't want to answer that one.
Why don't you want to answer that question?
No, I think it's, because of the work I do in grief, and especially with like childhood bereavement, like it's so developmental. And what I mean by that is like, sometimes I'll work with kids and, we'll get to a place where they're like, yeah, I feel like I've, learned coping skills. I feel like I got the supports I need. And then maybe years go by and then they'll say, Miss Kailey, I feel like I'm grieving again. But that's normal, right? And as they maybe share, maybe they have a big event at school coming up, and, mom and dad, maybe I lost dad and they're not there to attend that school event. And so I want to process that, right? So I think why I'm laughing that I don't want to answer that question is because I think it's very hard for me to dictate that, as far as like what, when is a good end point. And really that's also something that I really want the client to be able to articulate, something collectively and collaboratively that we can kind of say like, yeah, I think that you do have, the supports that you need. I feel like, let's try and see what this would be like for you to venture out on your own, right? And as you said earlier, I think, and not every counselor follows this model, but I also, I feel like my door is always open, right? And so if there's times down the road when when grief feels really hard, my door's open.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great answer, Kailey. I think it's a good answer. There's Jem. Jem has his own answer. Jemmers. What's
I think that's Scout barking.
Well, I don't hear Scout. I hear that's Jem. That's Jem for sure, right there. That little whine, that little whimper, the little frustrated dog message.
Jem says counseling can't end until he gets enough treats.
That's true. Yeah, that's Jem's version of counseling for sure. I was going to say, when is it time for counseling to end? I mean, in a good way. In a good way, it's great. Sometimes it's sad for me because I hate to see the client go, because I've built a rapport with them and I've really enjoyed potentially working with them. But usually, the way I kind of structure it is, we get a sense if things are going well. Like, I'll even ask that question. It sounds like things are going well. How are you feeling about that? What do you think about counseling? Did we meet our goals for counseling? Did we hit the marks that we wanted to hit? And what does it look like for us to maybe begin to kind of fade out a bit? And usually when that happens, I'll structure, let's do a check-in, and maybe if we're meeting every other week or meeting once a week, let's spread that out a little bit more. And then maybe in a month or two, let's revisit, or maybe even less than that. Maybe we don't even need to go a month or two. Let's say, okay, sounds like we're done. And of course, the door is always open for people to come back and say, hey, you know what? I want to do another check-in. Or actually, this thing happened that really maybe activated me based off of the stuff we've talked about. And then that's always a great time to, pop back in and see you. But yeah, I would say there does come a point where I start to say to the client, how's counseling working for you? Do you feel like you're still getting what you want out of this? And revisiting a goal or a treatment plan that we established early on for what we wanted to do in counseling can be very helpful for guiding us towards a healthy, natural endpoint. And there are unhealthy endings where, whether it's in couples work where one person just says, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore, whether it's in individual counseling that says, other things happened and I just have to redirect focus, or, I don't know about you, but I kind of feel like as counselors, we kind of get ghosted more often than not when someone says,
It
I don't want
happens.
to I don't want to work anymore. And yeah, that's totally fine. That's their right to say this isn't working and I'm done, or something else has come up that takes priority right now. And to which I'm like, yeah, I get it. That might be more important right now than what we were working on. Go take care of that. When you're ready to come
Hmm.
back, we'll be here. So
I
I
think
think
it's
there's lots
important
to
to,
go ahead.
sorry.
No.
I was just going to say too, I think it's also like we understand as counselors that like you may come and you're like, Kaylee's not a fit for me,
Mm-hmm.
or Steven's not a fit for me. Like, please don't feel like that's going to offend us as counselors. And I would argue that that should be true for all mental health professionals, right? Like every counselor has their own perspective, theoretical orientation, their style, approach. And so if it doesn't feel like a fit, like that's okay. And I know that sucks because like if you've invested like, oh gosh, I've spent time trying to find somebody, I find a counselor, they're not a fit. But I would argue, you deserve the best care possible. And so
Yeah.
you get to make those choices, right? Like you get to determine what feels like a fit.
All right. Maybe one last question here. If someone is nervous about starting counseling, Kaylee, what's one thing you'd want them to know? If you could impart just one
Yeah.
thing to them about the counseling process, what do you really want to make sure
I
people know?
Yeah, I would say it's valid. You feel that way. How can I help create a hospitable place where we can explore what you want to explore? Right? I would just encourage them that I'm here, again, not to judge. I'm here not to tell you, again, my work, grief work. I'm not here to tell you what your grief should or shouldn't look like. And I'm here as a compassionate companion.
Yeah. You've got your 10 companioning, or your tenets of companioning on the wall behind you,
I do.
which I really like. And I'll even use those in my work, and I'll ask the question, what do you need? What do you need from me right now? If you're nervous, what will help you
Yeah.
ease that?
One of the tenets of the companioning model is compassionate curiosity. And that's probably my favorite because it really is this idea of like, when you're coming into counseling as a client, like you're the expert on your lived experience, not me. So I want to adopt a posture of like, tell me more. Like, teach me about your unique grief. I'm not the expert on your lived reality. You are.
You're such a nerd, and I love you. Oh,
What about
because
you,
you're a nerd,
Stephen? How would?
not
Oh, well, thank you.
because, not in spite of. Just to clarify.
How would you relieve, not relieve, but reduce some of that anxiety for clients coming in?
Well, I think it's valid. I think the first thing, which I believe you said, is validation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, validate that you're nervous. I think that's something, again, kind of revisiting the idea of couples work. I think more often than not, couples don't validate each other. And one of the things I always try to, right off the bat, say, don't debate fact, focus on what you're feeling. And then when you hear your partner communicate that feeling, validate it before you do anything else. Because I think whether it's couples work, whether it's individuals work, whether it's grief, I don't think we get validated enough for our feelings. This is actually, I've heard it throughout the decade of, it's been a decade. Oh my God, it's been a decade I've been doing counseling now. I've heard it a lot in the decade that I've done counseling work, but I've actually heard it a lot more recently, which is kind of really sad, which is it's weak for me to talk about my emotions or to share a negative emotion, like I'm sad or I'm hurt or I'm frustrated. And I think there's something really powerful and courageous, first of all, about communicating that emotion. And there's something even more powerful about getting that emotion validated. Reminds me a lot of Brene Brown and her TED Talk, the Power of Vulnerability. She talks about shame. I think there's a lot of shame in our emotions sometimes. And when we can name the shame, we can rob it of its power. And we can be vulnerable, especially in couples work, but also in individual counseling, in grief work, and having us as clinicians try to validate that for you. I think it goes a long way. So if there's one thing I want you to know about the counseling process, we talked about validation, but it's huge. A lot of people don't get it. And if you go to counseling for no other reason than to have your feelings validated, I think that's a good reason to go. That's a very good reason to go. and
Yeah.
to have somebody else speak to that and try to have empathy in that.
Yeah. Well, think
It
about how
could.
many times we tell kids, they may say, I'm super nervous about the first day of school. I'm super anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's well intentioned, but what do adults typically say? You're going to be fine. Don't worry. And I get it. Like,
Yeah.
but I think what that kid needs in that moment is, I hear you're nervous.
Yeah.
What can we
Well,
do to make you feel a little better?
Yeah, I think parents, first of all, this isn't just a parent thing, but I think parents
No.
want, again, they want to fix it, right? We just want to come up with a solution that makes it better. And I think it can be very hard to sit in the uncomfortability of not having a solution, of not feeling like, especially as a parent, like I can't fix my kid's problem.
Well, it makes us feel incompetent.
As parents.
As adults in general, right? Like I think, again, we have this idea that to be an adult means that you've got your shit figured out. And I think I feel like I thought that, and as I'm an adult now, I'm like, I don't have anything together. And that's like that. And maybe that's like, okay, right? Like no one does. I tell that to clients all the time. Like no one has their stuff together. No one. And somebody that tells you they do, or like somebody that says like, I'm an adult and I'm, like, no. It's okay to not know. It's okay to have questions. And I think, again, when we model that to kids, because listen, I have so many adult clients that I meet with that'll say to me, like, my parents never like modeled any weakness, or they didn't like apologize. They didn't really show emotion.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to like, and then they're like, how do I model that for my kids when I didn't have it modeled? It's a whole thing. It's super tough. That was way a side tangent.
It was a good side tangent. It was a great side tangent.
All of that to say, yes, I think validation, having somebody say like, I see that you're feeling X, Y, or Z is really powerful.
Yes, 1,000% yes. All right. Anything else that we want to say before we get out of here today? All right. I feel like that was good. I feel like we got some good stuff in there. All right. Well, we'll try to be back again real soon with some more regularly scheduled content and maybe get some more people, guest visitors in here to join us. But thanks for listening to us today. Oh, real quick, before we go, my favorite thing. What are we reading, watching, or playing right now, Kailey?
The Gilded Age is that on HBO?
HBO Max, right? Used to be Max. Now it's HBO Max again.
I love it. It's a period piece. It's just, I don't know. It just feels kind of like an escape. And I just think because the world's a dumpster fire right now, like, I don't know. It's nice to escape for a little bit.
Also a little kind of on the nose for some of the stuff going on as we're heading into our own new modern version of a Gilded Age. But yeah, it is a very, very good show. Escapism from Julian Fellows, the guy that did Downton Abbey. Yeah, it's a great show. Just check it out. Absolutely. So we're watching that. Replaying the video game Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, because I was a naughty boy and decided to splurge on a Switch 2. Revisiting Zelda in 4K. It reminds me, it's really funny playing it in 4K and it running at 60 frames a second. It makes me think of the SNL sketch, Drunk Uncle. Not my Zelda. Running in 60 frames per second? Ugh, barf.
You know what else I should have said as far as watching?
What?
Thank God for South Park right now.
South Park's been knocking out of the park. And it is coming out. They've extended it so that there's 10 episodes, but they're not releasing weekly. They're doing it every other week, which gives us, again, it'd be nice to have it every week, but gives us lots of time to just enjoy being in South Park. Yes, and savoring it. Yes, it's been a nice balm for current issues. All right. Well, that's what we're watching and playing. We will hopefully see you all again. Look, drop something. We'll hopefully see you all again very soon. All right. So goodbye, Dr. Bradley.
I'm not doing it.
Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.
Goodbye.